The War Within Me, Part 2. Why did you lie for me? I asked Sam when the security guard had finally left. It was just the two of us at reception now. I had been so certain that he was going to turn me in. He might have been kind, but he was a no-nonsense person. And I had been cold towards him ever since the first session. He owed me no loyalty. Come with me, he simply said as he started to walk back out. I was puzzled as to why we were going out again. After I had followed closely behind him, we stopped, at the back of the building. There was a ladder leading up to the roof which he had started climbing on. Once he was at the top, he gestured for me to follow him. I still had so much adrenaline from the events of the past few minutes, so I was still scared. I took a chance and followed after him. He was now sitting on the roof, looking off into the distance. I had never been outside during the night, but I was kind of happy to see the stars once again. I tend to come here often. I just need to clear my mind, he said. Why did you stop me? I wanted to leave. I cannot do this anymore, I shouted. I could not help the tears that threatened to fall. I know it's difficult right now. You have to stay sober, he said. Just admit it, I'm pathetic. You said so on the first day, that I should have handled things in a better way. Everyone thought I was pathetic. I could not help crying. I could not help the mess that I was. Failed at everything. That was not your story, I told. I used the example of my past to tell everyone that there was always another choice, he said. Your past? I was intrigued now. I was in a worse situation than you a few years ago. Fresh out of jail, after a failed burglary. It was my third time in rehab, and I could not wait to get out again. So I could try the newest drugs. He smiled bitterly. He had a faraway, haunted look that I'd never seen before in his eyes. Did you end up doing drugs? I asked. I ran away from home because my parents did not accept that I was gay. They did not kick me out, but it felt like they did after the way they treated me. Fell in with the wrong crowd, and the next thing I knew, I was an addict, committing petty crimes, he said. I was shocked, looking at him. Thought I'd never done drugs before, let alone committed a crime. Thought you were telling my story, I said. That's why you were angry with me? Right. He asked. I nodded and looked down shamefully. Felt bad. He had been so kind and helpful towards everyone, but I had let the warped idea I had of him ruin things between us. I'm so sorry, I said. It's okay. I suspected that your cravings were getting worse the past few days, and with the news of your parents, I feel it would push you over the edge, he said. I don't want to see him again, nor do I feel like I can stay here anymore. Maybe jail would not be so bad. I could easily get my fix there, I said bitterly. I used to have so much anger towards them, but after a while I stopped caring. How I craved the days when I could forget about them for a few hours. If you let me, I can visit you more. We can talk. And I have a few methods that help ease the cravings, he offered. I don't know, I said. He squeezed my hand slightly, and I have never felt such warmth before in my life. Just stay a bit longer. It does get better, he said. Okay, for a little bit longer, I said. Due to the way things had improved between us, I was now more open to his sessions. It was hell sometimes, and my body felt like it could give in so many times. But he was always there for me and the others. He always had words of encouragement and tips for us. And over time, my body started to recover. When we had our private chats, we grew close. It had been so long since I had someone I could open up to. He and Kieran were the first people who showed real care for me in a long time. Sometimes, I would forget that he was my counselor/instructor. It was so open and real. Our conversations became more casual. And we started talking about ourselves and things that we liked, our hobbies, etc. I cannot deny that I looked forward to seeing him every day, because he made me feel at home. I liked the feeling of warmth that I got whenever I was around him. I did not want to admit it at the time, but I started to develop a little crush on him. Who could blame me, though? He was wonderful. But I knew my boundaries. He was my counselor and was supposed to be treating me. He probably did not see me in that way, for he was way out of my league. Kieran, who had now become like my best friend, ended up discharged earlier than me because he had passed his evaluation. For me, I still had a few weeks in there before I was deemed fit enough to leave. Before he left, he confronted me about my little crush on Sam. Hey, promise me something before I go, he said. Anything, I said as I helped him pack his stuff. It was cool that we were not confined to our rooms the whole day, and they were not fussy about visit. First, we keep in contact, and second of all, should not let the chance of something beautiful with Sam pass, he said. Nothing is going on between me and Sam, I protested, but I knew I was lying. The chemistry between us was too much for me to deny. but that would be breaking the rules, and I was pretty sure that he would lose his job if he ever became involved with me while I was at the center. I cannot become involved with him in any way, at least not when I'm in here, I sighed. Aw, you lovesick puppy. Ask him out when you leave, he smirked. You're insufferable. He does not like me in that way, I insisted. Nonsense. You'll never hear the end of it if you do not, he said. Ah, fine, I rolled my eyes. Sometimes my friend was such a bully. I wanted to wipe the satisfied look on his face. One day after a fitness session, I stayed behind to talk to Sam. I could not control the draw I had to him. I found every possible excuse to spend time with him, and now that Kyrian was out, I did not have anyone else to talk to. Most of the others had left already, and I was now mixed with another group that I had not quite connected with. So, what are your plans after this? He asked. Fix things with my friends and look for a job, and of course, stay away from drugs, I said. What about your parents? Keep on calling you, he said. Sometimes I think of talking to them, but I find that I cannot. You'll find courage one day, he squeezed my hand. Being around him was so difficult for me in the last days. I did not know if we would want to keep in touch. I'd forgotten how having a crush on someone was the worst thing sometimes. The butterflies alone kept me awake at night after I had seen him. I just felt buzz when I was around him. We were suddenly silent when he put his hand on me. We looked into each other's eyes. They were so warm and piercing into me. I felt like he saw me for me, which hardly ever happened in my life. I found myself leaning into him as he also came closer to me. Our lips were a mere seconds away from each other when there was suddenly the sound of a loud car horn. Oh, that must be one of the new patients. Let me hop along. I've got to go. His voice was shaky and he was turning a bit pink. I admit I was starting to feel a little bit flustered myself. Alright. I have to go and eat. See you later, I smiled, and we went our separate ways. I wished that car horn had not just gone off. Some things in life were enemies of progress. My heart was also racing, as I remembered how close we had been. Gosh, that man. I had a few relationships over the past years, but they never worked out due to my excessive use of drugs. After a while, I stopped dating due to my life problem. What I had not expected was to find myself falling for someone in here. It was a far cry from the guys that I had dated in the past, edgier guys who were failing at life like I was. This guy had his shit together. I did not think I would ever fall for someone good for me, to be honest. At dinner later on, I saw him. We had most of our meals with our counselors, as to prevent people from doing anything funny. After I had gotten my food, I started to look for a seat. Most of the tables were already full. That was what I got for getting caught up in a book and arriving late to dinner. Suddenly, San waved me over to where he was sitting with the others. I wanted to avoid him after what had happened earlier on, but I had no choice but to sit at his table. So, you are leaving in 2 days. Are you excited? Jimmo asked. She had come in with me and we were well acquainted. Sort of. Going to miss this place though, I said. Really? I'm dying to get out of here, Lewis said. Trust me, this is better than what is waiting for me outside. And I met some awesome people here, I smiled. Sam looked up and caught my eye when I said that. He smiled a bit and got back to eating. He was awfully quiet on that day. I hoped that I had not made him feel awkward earlier on. Too kind. We will miss you too, Jimmo said. I noticed that Sam's lips tightened a bit. We had not spoken about what would happen between us once left. I dreaded the day that I would have to say goodbye, for I had not gotten the courage to ask him out for the past few weeks. I had just enjoyed every little moment that we had. Not only that, I had a ton of baggage. I wasn't sure if I was ready to pursue anything with someone. Let me walk you to your room, Sam said after dinner. I agreed and he walked in silence to my room. I did not have a lot of things, just pamphlets I received and some clothes, so I had already packed all my stuff. He looked at my bag in the corner when we entered, more like glared. Thanks. I'm assuming that you have a lot to do tonight, with the new arrivals and all, I smiled. In all honesty, I did not want him to go. I wanted to spend just a little longer with him. You want me to leave so you can get some rest, he started. No, I don't mean that I want you to leave. I just thought you had better things to do. And this morning some new people arrived, I explained. Georgia is taking control of that. I just wanted to check in on you. We'll be leaving soon and facing the world sober is not so easy, he shrugged. Yes, I'm a bit frightened. Can I ask you something? I said. Of course you may, he smiled. Did you ever talk to your parents again? Only my father, about a year ago. My mother passed away before I got a chance to speak to her, he sighed. How did it go, if you don't mind me prying? I added. He blamed himself for what happened to me. He told me that he spent a long time trying to forgive himself. He and Mom could not forgive me for leaving for a long time, but I guess after a while they started to see things differently. Do you think my parents regret their decision to kick me out? I asked. I will not give you false hope, but maybe you should hear what they have to say, he suggested. I was silent for a while as I took in all that he had said to me. Maybe one day I would find the courage to speak to them, when I did not feel so raw anymore. Thank you, Sam. Ever since I came to this place, you've made me feel welcome. You saw me at my worst, and you did not judge me. I can never judge you. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone, right? We as people have our flaws. Some plague us to the point of seeking an escape. I learned that during my long journey to recovery. Our flaws are part of us, but they are not us, he said. Are you a poet? You have a way with words, I smiled. I do not always know what to say, he admitted. I found it hard to believe. He always seemed so confident in his words. He always had the right words. I'm having trouble believing you. There's so little you know. Like? I already miss you, even though you're not gone yet, he confessed. I did not expect my heart to spike up like that, at the words that he had just uttered. You have many friends. You will survive without me, I replied. There is no one like you, he continued. He was now looking at me, with an unreadable expression on his face. I suddenly felt really hot, so I made my way to my window. Now I'm your counselor. I've been trying to keep these feelings inside for weeks. But what I have learned in the past is that I should say how I feel when I still have the chance, he continued. I wanted to tell you how I felt, but I did not think you would feel the same way. I mean, I have nothing to offer you, I replied. Look down on yourself. So many special moments passed between us. But I tried to hold back. I told myself I would tell you soon, then the next thing I knew, you were leaving. He sounded so sad that I wanted to hug him. So I went up to him and I hugged him for the first time. I felt so warm and safe in his embrace. The stress that I had been under just evaporated into nothingness. We pulled away from each other after a while. Sam, will you go on a date with me? I suddenly found myself saying. I waited with bated breath for his answer. Yes, of course I will, Darian, he grinned. I smiled and gave him a peck on the cheek. I desperately wanted to kiss him, but I did not want to rush things with him. In the past, I had acted on impulse without knowing someone truly. I wanted to get to know him outside of this place, so that when we had our first kiss, it would be special. I have to go now. Good night, but thank you for asking me out, he said. Good night, I said as he left. I had a hard time falling asleep that night. I was just too excited to sleep. I tossed and turned until late at night. I wanted to be discharged already so that I would be able to finally go on a date with him. And to be honest, I was tired of the food here. I daydreamed about candlelit dinners until I fell into a deep slumber. I was walking on sunshine for the next couple of days. We shared a few secret glances and touches. I was so excited for the day that I would be discharged. Kieran and I had been keeping in touch over the weeks, and he was so excited to see me. He had sent me such a long letter when I told him about me asking Sam out on a date. So then, the day came when I had to leave. Sam worked till late for 2 or 3 nights a week, so we would only have our date later that week. I was so sad to say goodbye to him, but very excited to see him soon. Kieran had offered to let me stay at his for as long as it took me to get back on my feet. I cannot explain how happy I was to see my best friend when I had gotten out. I had managed to get through the hard part, which was recovery, but now the hardest task of being back in society was coming. To be continued. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become part of our Rainbow Force and stay wholesome.